Welcome back. Now, today, Ukraine's President Zelensky lands on African soil for the first time as he meets with President Ramaphosa. Hopes are high that it will contribute to peace in the Russia-Ukraine war, but this comes post-President Trump's explosive sit-down with President Zelensky, and also at a time when South Africa is trying to mend its relations with the U.S. Oscar Van Heerden, Research Associate at the Center for African Diplomacy and Leadership at UJ, joins us with his take on the meeting, its timing, and what it suggests for our bilateral relations with the respective nations, considering the country's BRICS affiliation. Oscar, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. As mentioned, the first time President Zelensky is in Africa, in South Africa, unfortunately cutting his time here short due to attacks in Kyiv. As we get started, talk to me about the importance of this visit.
It is quite significant. It's the first time, as you indicated. Trade between South Africa and Ukraine is not the highest that it can be. It's actually quite low. But clearly, there's an indication and a hand was stretched out to try and improve on the trade relations, particularly agriculture. As we know, Ukraine is one of the biggest producers of wheat in the world. And this is really what is affecting Africa, and why there was an Africa president's delegation to the Ukraine to talk to Zelensky and to Putin to try and bring an end to the war, because it is negatively impacting on the continent with regards to food security and so on. But more than that, I think, as you know, President Ramaphosa is obviously also going to touch on the ongoing war that is taking place and what it is that he can do to try and bring the warring parties together to get some lasting peace. Remember, Ramaphosa preempted this state visit with a phone call to Putin. And one can only assume it was to get from Putin directly what is it that he would want to place on the table with regards to President Zelensky.
You touched on some important factors there. The issue around agriculture. I mean, I can remember around 2022 what those soft commodity prices did when that war broke through. So agricultural ties and I guess relations aside, the timing of this visit is also quite significant, Oscar, considering the current geopolitical picture. Talk to me about the top priorities. I can imagine that, those peace talks, as we mentioned, are going to be top of mind, considering that, South Africa is also trying to solidify itself as a peacemaker.
No, absolutely. I mean, the timing is quite significant. As you know, the world is in complete chaos because of the chief disruptor, Donald Trump. Not only the tariffs, but also just taking issue with South Africa, taking issue with President Zelensky. You mentioned in your insert the meeting that happened in the Oval Office, where both Trump and the deputy or the Vice President Vance really went and embarrassed President Zelensky. And we know, for example, that the same administration is also taking issue with South Africa. I doubt that would be on the agenda. I don't think that we would want to share how we wash our dirty linen in public, but clearly it is at least a commonality that is going to foster some form of confidence and trust that we are on either side. We are being targeted by the Trump administration, and let's see how we can work together to bring about peace.
And I guess Washington probably going to be watching that meeting and the outcomes quite closely, right?
No, absolutely. Remember, the U.S. is not as innocent and a broker as we think. In as much as Trump is talking of peace, he's also talking about solidifying relations with Russia, as well as the fact that he is still providing weapons and logistics to the Ukrainian armed forces. That has not been suspended. We also know that the European Union are not honest brokers. They are integrally part of the war. They want it to continue. They don't want peace. And so in many ways, as luck would have it, or as fortune would have it, Ramaphosa is in a unique position where he actually is not a directly affected party. He can objectively engage with both sides, and he's got the ear of both Zelensky and Putin.
Talk to me about where this puts South Africa's diplomatic ties with Russia and I guess the BRICS grouping at large.
Well, the truth is that we know people are not necessarily aware, but there is a concerted campaign and strategy on the part of the Trump administration with regards to BRICS. The proxy war with Russia, the encirclement of China, the taking issue of South Africa. These are all telltale signs that it is actually a war on multipolarity. The United States are not interested. They want to remain the hegemon. They want to remain the superpower, the only superpower. And so there is serious consequences that is going to still come and derive from that. But at the same time, it's also about world peace. We know what's happening in the Middle East. We know what's happening in Ukraine. We simply cannot afford another front opening up with regards to Iran. So the U.S. is really have a bigger picture in mind.
Yeah.
I think that South Africans and the South African government needs to be aware of it, so that when they engage with Zelensky, it's not so much just bringing peace between Ukraine and Russia, but it's the realignment of multipolarity within the world.
South Africa has really been under the spotlight. We're also under the spotlight as we have, the G20 presidency this year. What have you just generally made of our foreign policy, Oscar?
Look, I mean, the truth of the matter is that there is a few fundamental pillars. Human rights is one of them. Secondly, solidarity is one of them. This is what informs the court case against Israel at the ICJ. And of course, trying to foster a good bilateral trade relations with major economies in the world, including the United States. We did not ask to have a frosty relationship with the U.S. We know that it's lies and untruths that suggest that we are treating certain segments of our society with genocide and farm killings and so on and so forth. This is just untrue. There's a bigger issue at play. We are not the ones that decided to weaponize the US dollar, to weaponize diplomacy and trade. This is the United States. All that South Africa is doing, and the world in large, is to respond to what the Trump administration is doing. And this is where we find ourselves.
Tough times ahead, Oscar. Thanks so much for your time and just sharing your insights. That was Oscar Van Heerden, Research Associate at the Center for African Diplomacy and Leadership at UJ.